It is an honor to be here with all of you beauties, here for the Marshall's Good Stuff Social Club. Yeah, okay. So I am an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I am an ATO resident. Some of y'all may recognize me from a show called Love is Blind. That's where I met my husband Cam, or most recently I was on Amazon competing to be the greatest reality star of all times. Y'all can watch that, it's airing currently. But on behalf of Marshall's, I'm so excited to welcome you all here today. We have some amazing sessions. Y'all are gonna leave with more friends than you came with. Okay, so don't be afraid to look at the person next to you, introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about yourself, because it's all about building community, right? We're here to better ourselves, learn more, and learn how to reach the life that we all desire, okay? So, we all know that Marshall's has been giving us access to the good stuff for the past 60 years, right? We all know their stores, we go in there, we get the cute outfits, okay? Y'all like mine today? Okay, bright colors is my thing. Be sure y'all stop by the color analyst station as well inside. But so Marshall said, you know what? We've been listening to the community, we've been listening to the women, and they discovered that 1 out of every 3 women feel like they are not living their best life. I can relate. So they said, you know what? We gotta do something about this. And that is where the Good Stuff Social Club came into play. So they wanna be sure that you guys have the tools, resources, and the community to live your best life. So in your bags, you have journals. Be sure that you're taking notes today, because we don't want this to be a one-day thing. Okay, we want you guys to take everything that you learned today and really, use that in your everyday life. Take it with you, okay? So let's go ahead. Y'all ready to get into the first session? Yes. All right. So our first panelist discovered the secret of creating time and space for joy in the midst of everything going on in life. I know that's right. Sometimes when your life is too busy, it's hard to find the happiness, right? You're looking for the light. So she sits on the Global Happiness Council of Work and Wellbeing. She's a best-selling author. You guys have a copy of her book in your chairs. Be sure that y'all read that, okay? She is one of the world's top 50 keynote speakers. I have to read her resume out because it's extensive and I don't want to miss anything. So today we are lucky enough to learn some of the tools that she uses to find happiness, and she's also going to lead us on a creative journaling activity today. All right, so please join me in a round of applause for Jenn Lim.
How y'all feeling? Great. Nice, lovely. What was it, 10:16? It's Saturday morning. By the sounds of, I'm staying downtown at the Hyatt Agency, and I was like, there's no one gonna be here in the morning. There's way too much noise for anyone to be here, but yet you all showed up. So thank you for being here. It's been a minute since I've been back to Atlanta. I think it was last time I'm here was before COVID. And I was thinking on the way back, or way to the hotel from the airport, like, why do I love this place so much? Like, there's something here. And I realized after talking to the Uber driver, and he's like, yeah, I just moved back from LA. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I used to live in LA. Anyone from LA? Okay, I'm trying not to offend you. So we were talking about, because, yeah, I noticed the difference too. He's like, yeah, why'd you move back here? He's like, people are nice. And is that someone's like, that is right. Because people say hi, they mean it. They say thank you, they mean it. No offense, I was there too. But there's something about people here that are real. So thank you for showing up and being real. So I was doing a talk for International Women's Month, and they asked me, what do you want for your walk-on song? So I'm like, so I was like, Beyonce, or no, Lizzo. And I was like, you know what? How about Dolly Parton? Everyone loves a little Dolly. I came and I was so excited. I was a little girl when I watched this movie. I was like, Dolly Parton. And I was like, listening. Does anyone remember this movie? Or some of you not even born. Like some of these heads are not even shaking. Yes. So I was a little girl. I remember dancing to this song, and then I read the lyrics. Has anyone read the lyrics or listened to the lyrics? Tumble out of bed, stumble in the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living, barely getting by, it's all taken and no given. And they never give you credit, it's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. And I was like, damn, nothing's changed. Like, this was from the 80s, and here we are, fast forward, you would think progress has been made, but I think the only change is like, it's not 9 to 5, it's like 7 to 7. And it's like, why is this the case? So I started thinking why. Like, what is going on? Something has shifted in us. I think we all gotta believe. And so why go beyond? And this is what I came down to after living and thinking and how we talk about happiness. Like, this just happens. This happens to us. Life just happens. And we've all felt the gamut of all the emojis, and this one really hurts me a lot because a lot of people are just like, I gotta show up, put on my happy face and I'll be all right. Yes, sometimes, but sometimes no. And how can we be more real about that? Because if we're gonna talk about happiness, and this is gonna sound cliche, you won't know your highs till you know your lows. Cliche, right? But is it true? Well, what does it mean to you? And that's where I'm trying to get to. What does it mean to you? Because oftentimes, that happiness, when we lose it, when we get to the other side, it is from that sort of loss. Some form of loss, some form of loss. We all felt this, especially in the last few years. Loss of a loved one, loss of hope, loss of expectation, loss of self. All these forms of loss kind of add to this thing of like, what brings us away from the state of more sustainable, fulfilling happiness? And then sometimes it's a loss of reality. Can y'all see this from the back? Just curious in terms of what we think, the perception that we want to put out in the world. We could talk about social media. It doesn't even have to be social media. It could be just how we show up in the world. And sometimes it's a feeling of loss of reality. So for me, during all this time, I realized, look, it's just not realistic to think I'm going to wake up in the morning and go to sleep and every moment's going to be happy. That's not real. But what can be real is that we can wake up in the morning, go to sleep at night, and know we lived a fulfilling day. Lived a fulfilling day because we knew who we are, as authentic as we can be, the values we want to live by, the North Star, the purpose, whatever you want to call it, the compass, because you're living the compass with your clock, because they're synced and in line. So that's why I got into this other place of going beyond, like what's the reality of what actually matters if we really want to be sustainably happy, like meaningfully happy. So there are 3 things that I've learned along this journey about this whole thing called happiness. It's always something until it isn't. It's always something until it isn't. So it's like, I just got paid. That's always something. Let's rejoice. Let's be grateful. And then I go to Whole Foods and this is all I can afford. Gallon of milk, maybe if we're lucky, some eggs. All right, that's okay. It's always something until it isn't. So I just got a raise, notch it up a little bit, and then I go to Whole Foods. This is what I can afford. That's all right. I'm grateful. I got milk. That's good. But then I go home and realize my kid develops lactose intolerance. So it's always something. We rejoice, we celebrate, and there's something until it isn't. So this whole sense is like, it's all impermanent. When we think about happiness, it becomes this goal that becomes an elusive goal. Like when we get that raise, I'll be happy. When I get that car, when I get that house, when I get this XYZ, I'll be happy. But what happens when you get to that point, there's always something more that we want to get to. So where is it that we can learn about this more sustainable happiness? The second thing I came across is this thing that I developed called optorealism. So this is kind of like the antidote for toxic positivity. Everyone's familiar with that. Some people some people, even when we go to work or we're in some public space, some people bring happiness wherever they go, and then some people bring happiness whenever they go. Because it's just that sense of, is this person being real? So optorealism to me is optimism on one end. Studies show us that it's not actually success that drives you to be happy. It's actually happiness, disposition, drives you to success. When you are open-minded, when you can think of solutions. This morning with the crew from this team, we figured out how to put this damn thing and connect it to the TV. That was an optorealistic solution. Thank you so much, team. That was amazing. So knowing that there is the best and the worst scenario, and there's something in between that's going to be real. That's where optorealism lies. So that when we hope for something we want it to happen, but when it doesn't, it's okay. We kind of knew there's something in between. I also call it expectation management. So optimism, that was number 2. Number 3, practice matters. This is the last thing that I learned. And this sounds so unsexy, like who wants to talk about practice? I grew up playing piano, that was not fun. It was practice, 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 but it was like to the end of like what I recorded in my head of what it meant. But what I now know is that I'm a recovering perfectionist. I see someone in the room nodding your heads. And it's like, that's why I was practicing. I had to be perfect until I realized, wait, this practice is for me just to take one step of progress. And we know scientifically happiness comes from the steps of progress, having a feeling of I'm getting from one place to another. So thinking about and remembering in your life to progress is the goal, is not to be perfect in that moment. And when you have that sense of progression, when you're not dwelling in the past, when you're not trying to predict the future, that's where the practice comes in. So it's practice for progress, not perfection. So those are the 3 things I learned of what matters. And that what it comes back to today's society and thinking like there's so much going around. There's all these decisions and choices we have to make, but when can we actually sit and make time to reflect, recenter, and refocus? Reflect on what we learned, recenter on who we are, and refocus on what's the most important things, priority-wise, in your life, in your days, and therefore a lifetime. So, all sounds great. We all heard this before. I know, you're all nodding. You've read this before, you had this inspirational books, you had your self-help, but insert your own expletive here. How do you get there? So for me, I like to reflect, so I better know how to act. So please, this reflection question for one moment. Where were you in 2020 BC? Yes, I do not mean that biblically, but if you're around, I'd love to know your skincare regimen. Where were you in 2020 BC? Where were you before COVID? And why this is important is because a lot of people have started, just like wanting to sweep things under the rug. It's okay to not want to think about it, but for one moment, humor me with this, because what happened in that time was not actually unpredicted. It was predicted. Futurists have said, we're going to have a pandemic, we're going to have a global warming, we're going to have climate change, we're going to have social unrest, we're going to have technology disrupting our lives. They had all these things lined up, but they didn't know. One thing they did not know, it was going to happen in one freaking year. The world got 2020. We got shut down, and we had a moment, many moments, in our rooms, in Zoom land to think, what is happening? And so this was already happening before COVID, BC, but the reality of how the pace of change is outpacing our own physiological ability to understand it was happening even more. Exponential change. And so as an example, good old telephone took 75 years to reach 50 million people. And if you were to guess what only took 19 days to reach the same amount of people, just guess, throw it all out. iPhones, good. It's a good guess, good guess. COVID is a good guess. It was actually Pokemon Go. As another example, okay, that was 19 days from 50 million people. About 60 days for double that, 100 million people. This just happened a year and a half ago. Anyone can guess? This one's a little tougher. TikTok's a good guess, good. It was actually ChatGPT. Only reason why I know that is because I asked ChatGPT. So, all right, pace of change is going crazy. Hard choices we never made before. We're still in 2020 BC, right when it hit, and we had to make hard choices about work, whether or not we wake up a few minutes earlier to get on video, or just say, never mind, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, everything's fine. I had these hard choices, and then, of course, for me, in my reflection, I remember when 2020 was counting down, I felt like the child. I felt like, the future's happening, I cannot wait. And then, of course, COVID hits, a few more wrinkles, a few more gray hair. But I think one thing we can all resonate with is that we gained a bit of wisdom. And the key of that is how do we keep it going? Because we still are bombarded with a lot of life, work choices more than ever. And it was crazy back in the day of COVID, like the Great Resignation, millions and millions of people quitting when we had no idea what was going to happen. That meant something. That meant some people were like, wait, this might not be the right choice for me anymore. And so we had this, McKinsey said this after COVID hit. They're like, the reason people are leaving is very simple, actually. It's not about your money anymore. It's important, but actually what's more important is that you don't feel cared for. You don't feel cared for by your managers. You don't feel cared by your organization, and you don't feel like you belong. This word of belonging is there for a reason. It's not just a buzzword anymore. So for me, it's seeing that spectrum of Great Resignation all the way to the Great Reawakening. For those people that actually said, no thank you, I'm making a different choice, reprioritizing my life based on what I want, there was a great reawakening. And that was the most promising thing I saw, of that uplift of like, wow, let's, like my brother likes to say, let's not let a good pandemic go to waste. What can we do about it now? So the Great Awakening is back to what we call happiness, and I think about it from a sustainable way, and this goes back to the science and positive psychology. What does happiness mean? It means, number one, being authentic to your true self. You don't have to tattoo it on you to remember it, but it's being authentic to you. It's when technology doesn't tether you, but you tether technology because you know it's a tool for your use to make your life easier. It's when you know you can get through anything. You have that grit, you have the resilience. You can look back and say, I've done that before, and I'll do it again in some way. It's when you have that compass and clock. That compass, because you have a North Star, you have a general idea of what that purpose is. Keeps on evolving, but that's okay, but you know you're spending your time towards that compass as well, the clock and the compass. And last but not least, most sustainable form of happiness is, of course, being around the people and pets that you love. PowerPoint tip, pro tip for anyone, if you ever get a chance to put an image of a baby and a pet, I highly recommend it. It's good for the soul. Where are you now? Where are you now in 2024 AC? So we rounded the corner. Everyone's like, oh, it's hope, but yeah, let's step away. A little trepidation. And of course, as we rounded the corner, this whole thing of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, still there. There's still a lot of these headlines. Now we have another, series of wars, and now we're all feeling a little bit of the election coming up, and we're like, okay, what's gonna happen now? This VUCA is here, but what's more important and interesting to me is what happens to us as human beings. So silver lining of COVID in 2020 BC and now is that at least the lid was blown off of things that were already there. They were very latent, but all of a sudden now we can talk about it. At least we could talk about, hey, we do have burnout, disengagement, high turnover. These are things that plagued us all, but what about mental health? What about those other things that we couldn't really name, let alone outside or within ourselves? So that, to me, was a silver lining of understanding, okay, look, reflection. We now know, according to Gallup, world's workplace, number one thing is that we're all burnt out still, and the well-being levels are still at all-time low of high stress, high anxiety. So that's not rocket science. I mean, that's totally not a newsflash, right? We know that. The takeaway, which is important, is that because this is a global sensation, a global phenomenon, the impact of what happened to us during those years, over the last 4 years, mentally, psychologically, physiologically, might not be acknowledged, let alone addressed. Think about that for a moment, because we could think about it, but what have we done about it? Done about it within ourselves. So this is happening around the world. I like to think about, okay, what can I control within myself? And what we have is this ability to adapt. Ability to figure out how to get this freaking thing to work in the morning with a crew of people. We can adapt, and we all do that every day. But what's cool about this is that even though with the rate of change being exponential, and we have our normal physiological adaptation, what we now know that generations didn't is that there's a way to tether this. When we ground ourselves in our psychosomatic well-being, that's the difference of why it doesn't matter so much when we have such huge transformative change around us, because we're grounding it within ourselves. So I'm gonna share a little bit about my 2020 BC. And this is all going to ladder up to your own stories too. But just to give you a little glimpse of what's gone on before this with this happiness stuff. So my buddy and I, Tony, CEO of Zappos at the time, we worked on a company, Zappos, and they were about delivering happiness. Anyone remember Zappos? I mean, you all look beautiful, so you must have good shoes on. So that was what we worked back in the day as a startup. Launched a book called Delivering Happiness back in 2010. I became the CEO. I've been running it since. And it was just this crazy dream that I didn't even know I had. Like, there was a very simple formula. Like, number one, get your happiness to employees first, through purpose, through meaning, through values. Then your employees are happier. Employees, then your customers be happier. Then you'll actually be more profitable and sustainable. And you're making more meaningful lives. Simple equation. And it was working, and I was just like, wow. We were like Inc. 5000, fastest growing company in the world. It was just insane. But the inconceivable happened. And I know it happened to everyone in this room in some way. Does anyone remember this movie? Yeah. Oh, raise hands. You remember every lyric, or I'm sorry?
It's my favorite movie.
Favorite movie, yes. So you know every line. So something inconceivable has happened to everyone in this room. And so when I started writing and working on this book that you're sitting on, or maybe not anymore, hopefully, I was like, I had this nice, tidy outline that publisher said, that's perfect, write about your stories and all that, and I was like, wait a second, we just got 2020'd. This doesn't matter anymore. Something needs to give, something needs to change, and I realized I was looking around the whole world, like, this quote kept on coming up, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And this one says be kind, but I was like, how can we be more human to one another? Be more human. And that question came up, it's like, have we even started processing all that's happened to know what to think, what to feel, and what to actually do now? Has that even happened yet? So for me, and this is something that we're gonna do all together, but what became very clear in the work we were doing with our clients and people is that we wanted to understand what happiness meant in the present time. How can we revisit what happiness means now versus before? How can we revisit our values? What have they changed from now, from the past into the present? So this is about the highs and lows. This is about the heartbeats. And this is the heartbeats exercise that we'll walk through later, but no, I'll just give you a quick example of mine. Highs and lows, basically not just at work, but in your life. So high for me, so I'm Asian American. My parents were born in Hong Kong. In my household, there were three quintessential ways to be happy in life. Number one, get into good school. Number two, become a doctor and lawyer. Number three, learn a variety of musical instruments. So I thought I was successful. You know, I got to UC Berkeley, studying pre-med, and I had piano under my belt. So I was like, okay, cool. And I started studying. I was like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like me. And I wandered and stumbled upon something called Asian American Studies. And all of a sudden I was like, floored. I was like, what? This happened to my ancestors? This is part of my history? I never read maybe a paragraph in California history book. And so it blew my mind. I was like, I'm gonna major in this. I picked up the phone to call up my parents. You all know the next scene. Asian American Studies? Why don't you come home more often? We'll tell you what your Asian American Studies is all about. I was like, damn, they're good at this guilt thing. But I stood my ground and I realized I made that decision to major in it. It was the first time I did something not of what others expected of me, but what I felt within myself. So fast forward, amazing, I graduated, parents were right, I couldn't find a job. And I started cold calling, and luckily for me, .com was born in Silicon Valley. I got a job at KPMG, money, title, status, literally the next day. You all know the end of that story. .com busted. I lost it all. Money, title, status was gone. I felt like a total loser because I lost my job, but that wasn't even the biggest loss that I had felt. It was actually within that year, my dad was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. And within a few years, we lost him after that. So there I was thinking I had my low when I lost my job, and then I lose my dad, and I'm like, wait a second, what is going on here? And so that's when I said, all right, let's use this as a green field. What is really important to me? What are my values? And that's fast forward when I co-founded Delivering Happiness. And in a way that was like so aligned with like, this is what I want to choose to do with my life, but it's scary. And of course, the highs go back to the low. I had to reorg the whole company. And being a CEO of a company for people, when you reorg something, that's one of the hardest things to go through. They put a PowerPoint slide, I'm not joking, Public Enemy, you remember? My face in the middle. And I was like, damn, this is harder than I thought. Of course, lo and behold, through those changes, Inc. 5000, we were growing again. And so I'm sharing these highs and lows just for my example, but everyone, I know you have those. And to reach deeper into what those means now is the contextualization of what I mean by going beyond. Because what it meant then was one thing. What it means now can be another. So for me, 2020, everyone got 2020, end of that year, my co-founder passed away, Tony. Yes, it was so unexpected, and I had 5 weeks to finish writing this book. My publisher was very generous. She gave me an extra day. No, just kidding. She gave me extra time. But it was just one of those moments that you just never knew would come. And here I am, preaching all about this happiness stuff, and it made me hold the mirror and say, what does it mean to me? All these things I'm saying, is it really that true that can get me through this? And through that processing, through that writing and trying to get it out, then I realized it was actually more true than ever. It is about those heartbeats. It is about those highs and lows. That's the irony of it all. The irony is like the real problem happens when you don't have those highs and lows anymore, when the beats are no longer beating. And then I realized and understood this whole idea of impermanence. Something's there, something is until it isn't. And that whole impermanence will transcend our lives for the rest of our lives, but at least we know what we have for real is ourselves. And when we ground ourselves in what makes most meaning to us, what matters most, that's when we know impermanence doesn't matter as much because we're here in the present. So as I was doing the research and looking through and how to finish this book, I came across this quote that inspired me. Norman Cousins, death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside while we're still alive. I said, I love this. I kept on reading, researching, and then I was like, wait, 2 other people said that too. Tupac and Buddha. They all said it in their same words. They're in their own ways, but they said the same thing. And I just got so excited when I read that. I was so excited. I cannot wait to put together a PowerPoint slide with Norman Cousins, Tupac, and Buddha all in one. So thank you for letting me fulfill my dream. But the thing of humanity, of what we believe, no matter where we came from in culture and the background, it comes back to very simple things about life and therefore death and therefore how we live it. So what really, how I share this heartbeats exercise with you is because we have those highs and lows, but if we revisit them in a way with a new lens, there's a big difference of what these highs and lows can mean. And the difference comes from one question. After you do your reflections, it's what did you learn? If we ask that question in our highs and lows, then we actually have a difference of whether this is post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. Because we all know that, and this is awesome because there's so much neuroscience supporting this stuff, that we can't erase our trauma. We can't just delete it. There's no Control-Alt-Delete for that. But we can reduce the impact it has in our brains, in our physiologically, and therefore in our actions and our emotion. And that's what reflections like this help with. And I found what we've done with all these people in the world, and now hopefully we can take it in your own story of the highs and lows. And not to be too geeky on this, but I am into the neuroscience. I guess I got that pre-med background for a reason, but there is something that makes sense. It's not just the fluffiness of the rainbows and the unicorns. There is a difference between when our brains are working in a learning mode or when they're in a survival, fight and flight mode. And the cool thing is that we now know more of when we are in that state, and we can actually be more attentive, in other words, self-aware of our states. So now we have this sense of, okay, when we're calm, we're cool, we're relaxed, we're chill, we know this is our higher cortex working, this is our prefrontal cortex, but when we're high emotion, when we're like animals waiting for their T-Rex to come around the corner, which can happen now because of AI and everything, but when we're in high emotion, our midbrain is working. Our midbrain is working when we're fearful, when we're angry, when our palms are sweaty. That's not the right kind of place we want to be, but we had to have it. We want to survive. We want to get to the next episode of whatever we want to watch. But because we have this self-awareness, then now we know when we are calm, when we are in that state. We can know that those emotions are coming for a reason and be aware, identify it, name it to tame it, as someone loves to say. And that makes us have smarter, more well-informed, less emotional decision-making, and therefore actions of what to do, of what we're going through in our highs and lows, in our everydays. So that's what I love to think about, because now that we have all this awareness of our bodies, of our emotions, we can identify it, we can see at any time where are we in our emotional states. And so what I like to think about is awareness through a balloon. We've seen balloons, we know how they float. When you see a balloon, just like staying still, floating, graceful, calm, equilibrium, that's cool. But we also see those balloons on the bottom when they're all burnt out, when they're like, I can't even get up for the next morning. How am I supposed to do this? Then we know what's happening in our brain, in our body, that's causing that. But since we know what it means to be disequilibrium, if we can do that state check within ourselves, we also know what it means to be in super equilibrium. When we can increase those type of hormones that of oxytocin, of serotonin, of the hormones that they call happy hormones, we know that that can bring us to joy and light and freedom. And I'll talk about how we can get there. So that's why I was so hell-bent on being fully going beyond, because it's about not just those highs, it's not just about those rainbows and unicorns, it's about embracing those lows, understanding what they mean, so that when you read that next inspirational quote, when you listen to that next podcast, it's not like, oh, that's good for them. It's like, you know instantly what to do for you, how you incorporate that into your daily practice. Because I'm on a goal to make practice sexy again. I don't know. I think it'll get there. So when we are real and embrace our real lives, then we have psychological safety. Does anyone know this term? It's been being used a lot. It's like psychological safety, not just amongst others in the room, so that you don't judge, you open to new ideas, but psychological safety within yourself. So you can actually ask yourself, am I okay? And say yes or no. Because it's not all about your strengths, it's also about your shadows. It's not all about your bright spots, it's also your blind. When we recognize the gamut and the spectrum of what we can be in, that's when we can actually be very confident that we're being better at living our best selves. Because we have that level of awareness and thinking through the difference between emotion and action on a day-to-day basis that's aligned with our values and higher purpose. So that's one of the premises I talked about. It's like nurture your greenhouse as you grow others. This doesn't seem like to be rocket science. And it's very simple too, because we heard it in the planes, right? It's like a whole oxygen mask coming down. Make sure you put it on yourself first. Very counterintuitive, but we stopped doing it. Maybe because we couldn't fly for 3 freaking years. I'm not sure, but now is the time to remember. We are so, especially the people in this room, are hardwired to care about others. And we now know until, hey, this is my job, I want to do that, it's not going to happen if I'm not caring for myself too. So this is all, again, it sounds like a great idea. How do we put into action? How many times we feel like this? Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine. All my to-dos, they're good. My to-dos are very achievable jobs. Not really. So this is the unending thing, and this is what blows my mind. Like, it's so intuitive when we have our phone in our hand. We know exactly what to do when this happens. But we don't exactly know even how to get to this screen for ourselves, let alone what to do when it happens. So we wouldn't let this happen to our phone, so why do we let it do it ourselves? Why do we let ourselves do it ourselves? So again, going back to the how, and it really comes back into start with your me. The belief is me, we, community. Me, start with the me, we is your teams, your family, obviously, and then community. The community that you're in, the people that you interact with at work, partners and vendors, all that stuff, whatever that is to you, and they all interact. But the key is to start with your me. So y'all have your clipboards? You've been ready since the first slide. She's got her pen all poised. So for the me values, this is your happiness heartbeat. So take some notes. This is like meant just to be fresh off of you. Don't think too much. Feel your way through it. The me values and why core values are so important in all this. It's the grounding that I was talking about. No matter all the exponential changes happening in the world, when you're grounded, then you know it doesn't matter because you are within yourself. You're being authentic. So Mr. Gandhi said, careful, watch your thoughts, become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they'll become your values. And once you understand and embrace your values, they become your destiny. So thank you, Gandhi. This is like the first step in understanding. Remember when I talked about the states of being? We'll be so much better at being able to identify states of being when we know our core self, when we know our values that are incorrigible and we cannot change. They'll evolve, but they won't change it that day. So this is what I would like for you to do your own heartbeats. What came out of me for this is like, I realized in these highs and lows, there was a pattern, there was a theme. In all these highs and lows, what was important to me? Authenticity, freedom, relationships, fairness, and love. And that's where I am now in my compass of what and how I want to live my life. So now here's your time. I'm going to give you 15 minutes or so, maybe 10, 15 minutes, depending on time, but to do this exercise. So jot some thoughts down. And this is meant to capture this moment in time. And what's cool about this, if you don't like to journal, if you don't, that's okay. It's more of a capture in time, and then you'll be able to reflect. Could be tomorrow, it could be a week, could be a quarter out. It's just cool to be able to say, you know, that was me then, and this is me now. So, step one, if you want to jot down what are your happiest moments in life. And when I say happiness, I'm talking about joy, fulfillment, like true, authentic happiness. And this doesn't have to be at work, again, it's in general. Just 2 to 3 moments of your highs. So next step is just, you know, the least happy moments of those significant negative effects that still sit with you in some way. When you're confused, you're sad, couldn't figure out how to get through it, lost, not feeling yourself or being heard or understood. What were those moments maybe like? So you start rounding those out in the highs and lows, stick through those moments, and as you capture them, think about this as your narrative, like the narrative of your life with these highs and lows. And what we're trying to do now is like take each of those moments and reflect and think about what themes or patterns were there. And this is where we get into the values identification. And I'll have a list of all the values that you can, there's others out there, but it's a list of what you could think about, what resonates with you, what values basically help you like basically feel those highs. What values helped you get through those lows? What values do you know are just constant themes of your life, and perhaps in a way that you didn't think about before? So list those values. Like one way to think about it is like, you know, when my dad passed, it's like what values were there, what values weren't there. When I lost my friend, but also when I had to reorg the company, or you know, stuff that was so painful I couldn't understand, and what values were present, what values were not present. And so here's the list. Hopefully you all can see it in the back. But this is just meant to inspire what values might be the ones you can pin to each of those events. It's a great idea if you take a picture and just zoom in. Yeah. And that's what we call adaptation. Thank you so much. I think so. I'll talk to the, that would be helpful, yeah. Yeah, totally. Thanks for asking. And you just said something that reminded me, like, what's cool about this is like when you do it, not just for yourself, you do it with your team. I've had families that do it, and it's, you know, you get to know people beyond your happy hour drink, your Netflix special, you know, like all that. It's cool how they see the true sense of belonging can come in. I'll give a few more minutes just to round up this exercise. There's no pressure in this, but does anyone want to share anything? Not yet. You could? Connectedness, yeah. Lovely, yeah. That's a huge one. So that was, yeah, sure.
Well, it's kind of like I just stole off. Friendship.
Friendship,
Were my highs and my lows. That was very important.
nice.
Fairness.
Fairness, yep,
I have one that it's not a good word, but it is a good word.
yeah.
Diligence.
Diligence, nice.
You have to find it in yourself and keep moving.
Yeah,
Keep going.
yeah, yes, yeah,
There's a good end to that.
that's right. Yes, that's.
I'm not sharing anymore. So.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Cool.
I was gonna say that all of the words that I wrote down, I realized that were just I wasn't living in harmony with how I felt about myself, and I was always looking to live life for others.
Oh wow, that's good. Do you want to say that louder? Did everyone hear her? Some people in the back didn't hear.
Yeah, I was saying that
Thank you.
I feel like often when I don't feel harmony with my life, it's because I'm living it for the enjoyment or fulfillment of others, and I don't look to see how I view success, and I'm always looking for this external validation.
Yeah, yeah. Expectations. And that's so interesting. It's always like we hear about societal expectations and all that stuff, but then that gets embedded in ourselves and we think that's the right thing, but then we don't question it. Was it the right thing to begin to embed? Thank you for that share. Maybe one more before we go and wrap this up and get some more caffeine. We got a long day. One more. There we go. Thank you.
One of my values was patience.
Patience.
So within the good, like the highs and the lows,
Yes.
sometimes it depended on my patience for things.
Ooh,
Just
yes.
to see some things through and
Mm.
not making a reaction based off of my emotions.
Yes.
Seeing how that would pan out.
Yes, that's a good one. Wow. Everyone hear that? Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll say my relentlessness.
Yeah.
I think setbacks happen, we have these lows, but we have to keep going. So definitely my relentlessness.
Nice. Yes.
I just thought of one. You put playfulness, and I know a big part of like when things are going crazy in my life, I take a moment and act like I'm in a movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, what are they gonna talk about in my documentary?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just a plot twist, you know?
Yes.
So I take that and I keep it moving.
Yeah. Plot twist is a good one. Yeah. Playfulness in that. I've been really digging the whole mantra of like dig deep to go light. That's been, yeah, it's been helpful somehow these days. Anyone else? I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. The level, I mean, because we're in Atlanta. Everyone's so real. I love it. All right, awesome. So, reflections on the heartbeats. Just a few questions maybe to ask. And remember, this could be an exercise, and it's meant to be recurring because you never really know how things evolve with the priority of your values. You actually never know how your purpose evolves because it evolves with you and for you. So, how did these moments forge the person you are today? How did your lows build resilience to your next high? Like next time whatever we're gonna stumble on something, we know. And then we can reach to this and say, well, I got through that, and I'm sure I can go through this, even though there's a different set of variables. And how could you live your values more now, today, in the present, in life, in work? And just like how that exchange right there, that share right there, it becomes a reminder. And I don't know if you do intentions or mantras, whatever it is, you can call it whatever you want. But again, from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to sleep, as long, you can't be happy every moment, but you can be fulfilled. Cool. So this is how we've been going deeper into me, and I think, okay, just checking the time. So the whole question of are you okay? Now we can have a better sense of being real about are you really okay? Knowing that there is this whole gamut of flourishing, and there's a gamut of languishing. And we know that to be true in general, but what I think is really interesting now is that that can be us in the course of a day. We can have those two emotions at the same time and know we can name it and be okay with it because that's really answering the question, are we okay? And so when I think about life and work, I'm thinking about, and people talk about this stuff, bring your whole self. What does that even mean? For me, the way my brain works, I gotta think about in ways that actually frame it, that I understand. So we call this wheel wholeness, it's in the book. Basically, it's not just about your skill set, your projects, your roles, your responsibility. It's actually about all the other pie pieces you have. Your mental space. Where are you mentally? Where are you emotionally? Where are you relationally? Where are you financially? Where are you physically? You fill this out, this becomes a whole you. So you're showing up not just as your work you, but your whole you. Revisit this every quarter. This is like, it's been helpful for me. Then you celebrate the things that have been working out well. And then you can also note, all right, these are the challenge points. This was high last time, but it's not so high this time. What might I do different? And what's awesome about this too is this whole sense of accountability buddies. Some of you, yeah. When you do this with a friend, it's like you already have those BFFs out there. You do this exercise, you're accountable for each other in a loving way. And that's really worked out, and this is my belief. You test and invest in your own greenhouse fund. Because what we're doing all here is like testing what really means something to us. Because sometimes it's like, I don't have time in the day, there's no way I can get to that, but when you're feeling the value of it, you don't have to make time. Time is made for yourself because you know if you want to get to these other goals, you want to love your people more, you have to feed into that fund of yourself. So that's where the testing comes in. This is the fun part of how to do this fund. This greenhouse fund is like one person's walk in the woods is another's marathon, ultra marathon, which I never understand. But one person's massage is another person's meditation. All these things that we get to play with and then understand. We can journal whatever you want to do and feel and realize that value when you know your fund is growing. And this is the key of where I was going with reflection, integration, because sometimes we learn it, we forget it. We get down on ourselves, wait a second, we relearn, we practice again, keep practicing, oh, I forgot. But then you really learn it, and then you really feel the value, and then you embody it. And that's why the practice is so important. It's the reflection, the integration, and then it becomes your embodiment, because you know what is good for you. So even when we think we're just like spinning on this hamster wheel, what it actually is, if we do this, reflect, integrate, and practice, if we look back, we've actually gone somewhere. We're going up a spiral staircase, knowing there's more to go, but we've gone somewhere. There's the progress, not perfection, that we're making. And showing up daily used to mean full capacity, 110 tilt. No, what it actually means is not every day is going to be 100%, and that's going to be okay. And after all this I'm talking about, when all else fails, so that was the me. We're going to go through the we and wrap this up too. So our time is spent in we greenhouses with other people. This study was interesting to me. Is basically in our lifetime, how much time do we spend with whom? How do we spend our time? So time spent with family, and we mean by relatives, friends, like cousins and all that. It's very like it's front ended. When we're young, we spend a lot of time with those folks, cousins, relatives, aunts, that kind of thing, parents. And then when we have children, if we decide to have children, we realize, oh, it's only like a solid 7 years we have this. So we look back, zoom out. What do we learn? We should be present. If we're gonna have kids, we're gonna whatever form, let's be present for those years before they go to fly the coop. And then they looked at time spent with partners. It was like, damn, that's a lot of time. And it gets higher. So what did we learn? Choose wisely, people. What else did we learn? May the force be with you. All right, time spent with coworkers. This is not rocket science. Everyone knows we spend an inordinate amount of time with coworkers, more than the people we love. So what does this teach us? What is our learning from here? Life is too short to work with people you can't stand. All right, time spent alone. Time spent alone. This one's a little bit, wow, when I first saw that, I was like, ooh, that's kind of scary. That's a lot of time with myself. Keeps on going, keeps on going. Make sure that time alone is the only constant. Now that we know that, it's reminding us, so make sure you love yourself. Make sure you love yourself. There's this study that blew my mind of people, and they didn't tell them this is what they're studying, but basically, they had a choice to either sit alone with their thoughts or cause them self-harm. They had a button to press to harm themselves, to basically give them a zap, and they'd rather do that than sit with their thoughts. It's time we can change that around. How can we sit with our thoughts? How can we love ourselves more? Because not even just strongly like yourself. Let's start there. And the rest, as you can see, it does actually ripple naturally around you. So this was interesting. So this is the whole comprehensive, the time spent in life. And I was reading this post, and so many inspiring people like commenting after, oh, I'm going to change the way I spend my time, prioritize. And here's Matt. Matt's like, not sure this is an inspiring post. I reckon it's pretty depressing regardless of the age you're at. I was like, damn, Matt. He had the realism, he forgot the opti. But this is what made me think about how we can move from the me, we community, and we are just all interconnected. How can we tie it all together? And it's all these actually really simple questions that I've been asking. We know epidemic in the US, US Surgeon General said loneliness is the epidemic, worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I said, depends on what kind of cigarettes you're smoking. Totally kidding. But no, this is happening. And if we're alone, and we can be around so many people but still feel alone, so what is it that we could do for community? And these two questions have been so helpful in just general life and in my work. When I say, people want to say, what's in it for me? And it's fair. People need to know what's in it for them. And you ask at the same time, what's in it for all? So no matter what sort of situation you're in, if you're answering both these questions, you automatically know, hey, my needs are being met. But at the same time, what's the scenario of these people's needs being met as well? That is building community, rippling your own impact of your walking values, your walking purpose to those around you and that you touch in your ecosystem. Last point of community is biodiversity. And this one has been really cool because does anyone know this guy named Sir David Attenborough? Yes, all right, thank you. So if you don't know him, he's like that British dude, if you've, on every documentary about wildlife, it's the same dude. He's like 90 something now. He's still hanging at the UN saying, hey people, do you even know? So if you haven't seen fans of Netflix documentaries, fans of medicinal marijuana know his voice very well. And so basically he says, look, UN, did you get this? I've been studying this for 9 decades, and this is what we've seen. Those habitats with biodiversity, those with the greatest varieties of flora and fauna that exist in ecosystems, they're actually the most sustainable, resourceful, and adaptable. Hands down. And I get inspired by a lot of things, but nature is always number one because it's not about Earth surviving. So Earth will be around. It's about us surviving. So how can we learn from nature? Biodiversity. Keep that in mind in anything you grow. Anything you grow in your greenhouse and with yourself. So how can we just wrap this up in terms of beyond happiness? How might we go beyond today? Remember to dive deep. You are already starting with your me. The fact that you woke up this morning and got here, you are already starting with your me. How might you dive deeper into that me? And then being fully aware of those highs and lows and your state of existence. Where is your balloon today? Where is it going to be in an hour? Where is it going to be on Monday when you go to work? Then when we know what matters and we think about how practice matters, how optorealism matters, then we can be better at being our best self because we're reflecting, we're centering, we're refocusing on what matters most on a continuous basis. And that's the confidence we want to feel good about fulfilling days because we're actively reflecting, integrating, practicing what fulfills us, what brings us back our battery charge. So remember to test and invest in your greenhouse fund. And last but not least, if you're gonna do it when you're ready, the only thing you lost in doing that is all that time. Because there's no perfect time, we all know that, but when you start, you can look back and say, look at what I did. And that, I think, concludes this session. And I just want to thank you for being real, being from Atlanta. I think we're doing a book signing later. I'd love to answer any more questions you have. Last thing, if you remember any freaking thing from this presentation, please, please, please remember to nurture your greenhouse as you grow others. Because I know we will grow better together. Thank you so much.